Braves on both fronts. But Soto's out. And this was something that John and I had talked about. I want to pick your brain on, is that like, I don't think the Nationals left a choice for Soto where it didn't matter the number. And this was something when you watch the Nationals, and the Braves just lost today, but they won the series, and the Braves have really, really beat up on the Nationals this year. And one of the things you see when you watch these games, and I'm sure if you watched every Nationals game and you're a Nationals guy, you've seen like Juan Soto's not having fun. Like none of this is fun. You can tell it's rough right now for him. And he's looking around. He's like, my protection is Josh Bell. Like Nelson Cruz is not here for the long haul, and like he's probably out. Josh Bell is having an all-star type year. The farm system is in disarray. Like they have to move him and get value out of him. There's no protection. So he's walking more than he's hitting because no one's throwing him anything. Baseball is a long season. Baseball it's a grind. And you were telling me Juan Soto wants to do 300 plus games before he has any real major league help to give him good stuff to hit? You can throw him all the money in the world. That's just a terrible way of living. Like it zaps the joy, where this was something I monitor. I'm like, it doesn't matter about the money. Like the learners will spend. We've seen it. Like they've been one of the better ownership groups in baseball. It's just, there's no logical reason because it's so barren now around him. He can't stay. Like you just can't. It's not fair to him. He will hate baseball if you put him in that situation for 3 years because no one's going to pitch to him. That's never going to happen. Teams are too smart. They're like, yeah, we'll just walk him. We'll go to the next guy. Why would we ever pitch to Juan Soto? And then you're like, well, what's the point of paying him all this money if we can't use Juan Soto to be Juan Soto? Does that make sense?
No, it does. I mean, I was watching their Seattle Mariners were in town in DC, and it was, I want to say it was the fourth or fifth inning, second, third, 2 outs. Juan Soto's coming to the dish. It was Chris Flexen on the mound. First pitch, changeup, spiked. Second pitch, curveball, made it about maybe 50 feet, and then they put him on. Nelson Cruz hit a ground ball to the shortstop, inning over. So, like, why would you pitch Juan Soto? And it's no disrespect to Nelson Cruz, who has 400 home runs, if not more, in his career. But he's not the same player that he at least has been in years past, at least not so far this season. And the market for Soto is really interesting because you could say that the market is only your rich teams, right? You could say, well, the market's only the Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, Padres, Giants, maybe the Cubs, your highest spending teams, right? And that makes sense because if you're trying to sign Juan Soto to a $500 million deal, there's only so many teams that can do that. Cleveland's not going to be able to sign Juan Soto. Oakland's not going to be able to sign Juan Soto. However, what if Cleveland or Oakland or Tampa Bay, I'm just kind of throwing teams out here, have a trade package? Juan Soto doesn't have a non-trade disclosure in his contract. Like the Washington can technically trade him wherever they want to trade him. Whatever the best package is, they can trade him there. Cleveland can go acquire Juan Soto, hypothetically. They can acquire Juan Soto's talents while also understanding that they're only going to have him for 2 years, 3 years at a time. I forget when he hits free agency. I want to say he has maybe 2 years left, if I'm not. Again, hypothetically, you have a team that is a smaller market team, but maybe they're trying to compete right now. Maybe Tampa Bay, maybe. If Tampa Bay just signed Wander Franco, they're not going to be able to sign Juan Soto as well. But a team trying to win a championship right now, they have a chance to be contenders right now, or at least in the next year or two. You acquire Juan Soto for a couple of years and you let him walk in free agency, or hypothetically, if you're not in contention for whatever reason, you just trade him out again. So there's like a group over here saying there's only rich teams that are going to be vouching for Juan Soto because there's only certain teams that can afford him. But there's a part of me that's like, if I'm the other 29 other teams, whether I can afford him or not, I'm still trying to acquire him depending on where I'm at, talent-wise and roster-wise right now.
Well, I guess the worry, if you're a contender, and you're still going to have to give up the farm for him, even if you're not going to pay him, like you're still giving up an unbelievable rent. Like I don't even want to know what the final deal for Juan Soto is going to be, because I think it's going to be one of the more lopsided trades in Major League Baseball history, because by and large, to your point, I don't think where he gets traded to is where he stays. I don't think that's the team who gives him $500 million. Like I think it's kind of like a Carlos Correa thing where like, yeah, he bounced to Minnesota, but it's like this is not where Carlos Correa is locking down the long-term big-time deal. I don't know. Like Aaron Judge, we'll see what happens with him and what his market's like this offseason. But I don't know. I don't know what will ultimately happen here, but it just seems to me like it's inevitable. The only teams that can offer, who are both contending and can offer the kind of money to make it realistic, where it's like, yeah, we'll take the risk on him leaving in free agency in 2 years. But if we're going to give up this capital, it's like it's the Dodgers, number one. Like they should be considered the favorites. Like if they want Juan Soto, they have the means to go get Juan Soto. The Yankees, and then the Mets, I think you also have to throw in there, and then the Astros. And I think that's it. I really do. Like there's teams that make sense. Like the White Sox should be doing whatever it takes. The White Sox have not been able to figure out the right field spot. And I mean, how long, like how many Adam Eaton and AJ Pollocks are we going through before we really nail down the right field spot where it's like, let's just get a long-term answer there. Like Adam Eaton, like AJ Pollock, but you want to find somebody in that spot long term. And they have, if you go back through the Rolodex of White Sox right fielders and what they've tried to do there, it has not been great. But if you've had the season from hell, you have all this young talent, you're trying to win now, you're in a winnable AL Central. Like everyone, the Tigers and Royals can't get out of their own way. The Twins are shaky. Like they're not world beaters by any means. And you should be better. You should be the best team in this division by a landslide. Like that's who should get in on this, but we know Reinsdorf's not doing that. We know they're not paying $500 million or even the 2-year flyer, but I'm like, do the 2-year flyer. If you're the White Sox, that's the team. Like that, when I went through the list one by one, I was like, the team that makes the most sense is the White Sox. Like they should give up the farm and whatever they have left because this ownership group or this front office is out. Like if this doesn't get fixed, like Han's gone. So if you're Rick Hahn, you're like, just do it. Take a huge swing. Who cares? It's not going to be your problem if it doesn't work out anyway. I don't know. What do you think about White Sox and Juan Soto?
The White Sox are definitely interesting when you consider the talent that team already possesses. Certainly,
yeah. You can even throw in young Makata. You can throw in guys who like they're major league guys. You can literally throw right to the Nationals right now.
No, yeah, absolutely, and I just think I just don't know if it's certainly an option. It definitely is. I know John Heyman reported that the Padres could definitely be one of the top. So they've shown a willingness to spend. They want to contend right now. That's interesting. I personally think San Francisco is the greatest any team in baseball. So, you know that meme going around with Brian Windhorst and doing the pointy fingers because of the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm looking at with San Francisco. So San Francisco won 107 games last year. They've taken us back this season. However, they had Buster Posey's contract off the books last year. They had Johnny Cueto's contract get off the books last year. They're going to have Evan Longoria's contract come off the books quickly. They signed Brandon Crawford to a 2-year extension, but that's obviously not a long-term commitment. They got Mark Melanson off the books a couple years ago. So I could keep going on and on. All those contracts that Farhan Zaidi inherited when he took the job as president of baseball operations in San Francisco, they're kind of off his book for the most part now, with a couple still lingering. They have nearly $100 million to spend. This last offseason, they refrained from signing any big name guys. They re-signed Chris Bryant. They've gotten some criticism for it. And right now, this season, they've been struggling a little bit. It's just swept the Brewers, and they're still in contention. But they're not 107-win San Francisco Giants right now. They have all this money that they can spend, yet they didn't spend it last offseason. Why? Because at the shortstop position, they re-signed Brandon Crawford to a 2-year extension. The biggest free agents available this last offseason were Carlos Correa, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien. They were shortstops. And so to me, San Francisco is hanging around right now, 1 year off of 107 wins. They're still in playoff contention this season. They have all this money to spend. They have a top 10 farm system in baseball. Juan Soto is out there who's going to be demanding $500 million. San Francisco has money. San Francisco has prospects, and they so direly need a middle of the order bat. San Francisco makes a ton of sense logistically.
I like that. I mean, they're, like you said, they're a team that just feels like, well, they've been old. Like that's something that people don't realize. It's like this is not a young team by any means. This was not a team that was ahead of schedule last year. This was just like oh, we kind of overachieved. We hired right. We brought in Andrew Bailey and friends, and we had this great coaching staff that just got the most out of the Discofanis guys like that all over this team. But eventually that runs out, and now Posey's gone. And what they also ran into, and I mean, this is this was one of the things that I was worried about, is that, like, yeah, it sounds great in theory to just transition from first ballot Hall of Famer catcher to next first ballot Hall of Fame catcher. That sounds great. Like, when does that happen? Like, that's not a thing. Just like it was so clean to go from Posey to Bart, and you were like, well, that's not how baseball works. He might just be bad. He might just not be a major league ready guy. Like, the Posey retirement hurt, and that was gonna be a problem where you can't just pencil in this guy to take over for veteran first ballot Hall of Famer, no matter what he was at that point, Buster Posey. Like, that was always odd to me, of just moving past that going into the year. And with Bell, with Crawford, like you mentioned, with Longoria, you go up and down this list. The outfield, obviously the weakest part of all this. Soto does make a lot of sense. I just wonder if they have the farm, if they have it right now, to give enough to Washington that would interest them. I'm not sure they have that, but they have the money. Like, if they wanted to go down the $500 million guy, like, for somebody, like, Soto's the guy you do it on. Like, these guys don't just come up for trades ever. Like, this is a new thing in Major League Baseball, where this guy is going to be on the, like, open market. We'll see what happens with Judge, but that's even a little bit different because the injury concerns and everything else. Soto's an all-time, like, unbelievable unicorn to pop up in trade negotiations, and who will be a free agent and be ready to go in his prime. Just it's just so different. Guys like this don't become available at this point in their careers and playing at this level. If you're the Giants and you're Farhan, like, you're definitely having meetings about this, right? Like, you're talking about this.
So Elliot Ramos is one of their top prospects in San Francisco. Marco Luciano is another one of their top prospects be available. And here's what you ask yourself if you're Farhan Zaidi in San Francisco. You ask yourself, okay, we love Elliot Ramos. We think he's going to be great. Is he ever going to be greater than Juan Soto? The answer is probably no. Like, Juan Soto is generational talent. Best case scenario is he ends up being just as good as Juan Soto. But, like, you already know what you're going to get out of Juan Soto. So I think that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself. A lot of times, especially fans, they get so caught up, as you just mentioned, with, like, guys like Joey Bart, of the potential. Oh my God, one overall prospect. What could he be? Well, we know what Juan Soto is. It goes back to our earlier conversation in the very beginning of this podcast. It's hard to pass up the guarantee. So go guarantee, right?
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with some more Major League Baseball. All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast with Danny Vietti of CBS Sports. Danny, we still have a couple quick things I wanted to touch on with you. I'm curious. The Milwaukee Brewers are kind of the forgotten team here, right? Like, they just are plodding along, going to win the NL Central again. They're a team where the Brewers are funny to me, because if you're box score watching every day, there's not a weirder team to look at a box score for me than the Brewers, where you go up and down the roster and you're like, I don't understand how they scored 9 runs tonight. Like, I don't know where these runs are coming from. This lineup stinks. It should stink. Everyone is like, you go up and down the list and you're like, I don't know where the hitting's coming from. And yet they hit enough to win every year. They do enough. They deserve a lot of credit.